Hello my friends, welcome back to our machine learning pipeline built in Lambda. In the previous tutorial we realized that we don't have the Scikit-Learn library and neither the NumPy library which are required to implement our pipeline, and that's where Lambda Layers come into play because that's exactly what will allow us to get our missing libraries NumPy and Scikit-Learn in our Python 3.8 environment. So let's click layers here. It actually took us to the bottom of our Lambda function, right? If I go back up and if I scroll down, well, this is another way to find the layers here. And then we're going to click add a layer. And so indeed, our runtime is Python 3.8 with our architecture. And then we have three ways of choosing a layer. So a layer is like an artifact containing exactly some extra packages or libraries to include in your Python environment. And so you have three ways. First, you have some pre-existing AWS layers, provided by AWS. And if we have a look at them, well, unfortunately, we'll find nothing regarding Scikit-Learn or NumPy. At the time I'm speaking, I don't see any Scikit-Learn AWS layer. Maybe when you take this course, you will find one, but I've been using Lambda for quite a while and I have never seen it. We have Pandas, but we don't have Scikit-Learn or NumPy. So that's out of the question. We can't use the AWS layers. Then you have custom layers, but this would require us to make the layer ourselves, and it would be quite laborious. Of course, that's not the option we're going to choose. There is a much better option, which is the third option here, specify an ARN. Basically, it consists of just specifying the ARN of a layer that is made by another developer outside of AWS, for example, on GitHub. And well, in order to find a layer that contains Scikit-Learn and NumPy outside of AWS, well, we're going to go exactly to your favorite browser and we're simply going to enter in the search Scikit-Learn Lambda Layer. There you go. Second suggestion here, Scikit-Learn Lambda Layer. And then you will find tons of stuff. Let's take, for example, the first link here, Model Zoo Scikit-Learn Lambda, which should contain many layers that contain Scikit-Learn. And since NumPy is a dependency of Scikit-Learn, well, it will also contain NumPy. And so if we scroll down here, well, we'll find layers.csv. And as you can see, you will find many different layers with their specific ARN for not only several Python versions, but also several Scikit-Learn versions and in different regions. And actually, if we scroll down, well, you will see that the highest Python version for which we have the Scikit-Learn layers here is actually 3.8. As you can see, I'm scrolling down and this is the highest version. So what we need to do now is find a row that contains the ARN of the Lambda layer for Python 3.8 with the highest Scikit-Learn version and for the US East 1 region. Because remember, in our console, we are in the US East 1 region, North Virginia. And so that's exactly this row, Python 3.8, the highest Scikit-Learn version 0.23.1, US East 1. And so what we need to do is take that ARN, and that's exactly what we're going to enter in that option, specify an ARN right here. Okay, so we paste it, and then if we click verify, well, this will work, right? Compatible runtimes, Python 3.8, perfect. That's exactly our runtime. And then we click add. Okay, so this will add the layer containing Scikit-Learn and NumPy as well into our Python 3.8 environment. And now you will see that if I go back to my Lambda function code, and if I import the two libraries we tried to import before, which are NumPy and Scikit-Learn, well, you will see that we will eventually get the hello from Lambda response with absolutely no error. Let's try. I'm going to click deploy here just to validate the code. And then updating the function, success, perfect. And now if we click test, you will see that I now have Scikit-Learn and NumPy because indeed, now the response doesn't get any error. It gets the 200 status code, which means success, and of course the body hello from Lambda. So now we have Scikit-Learn, we have NumPy, and we can finally start implementing our code. However, now some of you might be asking, maybe you noticed this when I showed you the complete code. You notice that actually among the libraries that we use, we don't have Pandas. We don't do the data preprocessing here with Pandas. We implement our own function that imports the data set instead of using the read_CSV function that you know very well by Pandas. And well, there is a specific reason for that, because probably you thought that maybe we can add another layer to include Pandas as well in order to do an easier data preprocessing. Well, of course I tried to do that, but the problem is that we will have a size issue. Basically, the layer that we imported to include Scikit-Learn and NumPy in our Python environment is quite big already, and there's a limit in size. And so if we try, for example, to add another layer here which will include Pandas, like for example one of the AWS layers, remember we have one for Pandas, this one, AWS SDK Pandas Python 3.8, well, you will see that it will not work because of a size issue, right? I'm just going to choose the version here, 21. We have one option anyway. And if we click add, you will see that it will not work. Layers consume more than the available size. And even if we try to take the ARN of another Lambda layer that we take from the web containing Pandas, like for example, let's enter again here, Pandas Lambda layer. Well, what will happen? Well, let's take the first link again. I'm not sure where it's taking me. But there you go, that's perfect. See, another example of how it's so easy to find the ARN of a Lambda layer for your region and for your Python version. Well, let's see, we are in US East 1. Let's scroll down again. You know, each time I just had to take the first link. So I'm scrolling down again to find US East 1. There it is, US East 1, and then for Python 3.8. Oh, and for the x86-64. That's exactly the one. That's the row I'm interested in, because this is exactly what corresponds to my Lambda function. So I'm going to try to take that ARN. Maybe it will be of a smaller size and it will work in our Lambda function. Let's try, specify an ARN. Let's paste the ARN here, verify it will work because it is compatible with our runtime, Python 3.8. But then if I click add again, well, you will see I get the same error. So that's exactly why in the code, we're not doing the data preprocessing with Pandas because of that layer size issue. But that's okay. It will give us a little bit of coding practice and we'll implement these data preprocessing functions very easily, very efficiently. So here I'm canceling. And of course, I just want to show you one last thing, of course, is that, well, Pandas is not included in our runtime, right? Let's just check that super quickly. Let's deploy this. Let's, once it's deployed, let's test. There you go, updating the function, successfully updated the function, and now let's test again, and you will see that we will get an error again because we don't have Pandas. So we don't have a choice but to re-implement the data preprocessing with our hands, and as I said, this will be good coding practice for us, and then we'll enjoy the benefits of Scikit-Learn to build our random forest regression model.
Now make sure to check out these videos on the right or the full course in the description to continue your learning, and I look forward to seeing you there.